Christian missions that employ oral strategies such as Bible storytelling generally do so in order to give oral learners, that is, non-literate learners, access to the Word of God through non-print mediums of communication. The Seed Company's oral Bible storytelling ministry, however, not only makes sacred scriptures accessible to oral learners, more importantly, it aims to complement and therefore accelerate the impact and mobilization of local mother tongue Bible translation projects. Its primary aim, then, is to serve Bibleless or partially Bibleless people groups. OBS projects train people in Bibleless people groups to effectively craft and retell Bible stories in their mother tongue. From these mother tongue Bible storytellings, audio recordings are made. Depending upon the project design, high-quality recordings can also be produced and distributed. OBS projects train teams of mother tongue story crafters to craft and test these new Bible stories, and to regularly tell those stories in a variety of ministries in their local communities, in churches, schools, and civic groups. These storytellers, in turn, are trained to train other mother tongue speakers how to tell these Bible stories in their homes, in small groups, or over the radio.
One day, right after I had told the story of the birth of Jesus to a large gathering, the catechist from one church came up to me and said that he had 5 people in his community who would like to be trained to become Bible storytellers, to tell Bible stories in our own language.
OBS also trains project facilitators, trainers, consultants, and managers to support and sustain the ongoing work of regional OBS projects. The effective telling of newly crafted mother tongue Bible stories offers swift and tangible evidence to Bibleless communities of the value of hearing the Word of God in their mother tongue. And language communities that are convinced of the worth of hearing the Word of God in their language are then mobilized to invest in the development of a mature Bible translation project.
We have been very happy and very excited by what we have seen on the ground, by the feedback we have gotten from pastors whose people have been trained through this Bible storying method. And for us, it's something we want to keep. We want to expand to other communities. The Ngee community has been raising funds. This year, we didn't have a story training this year, but because of the storytellers who were trained last year, they continue to do the work in the field. And now the people have been raising money to have the complete Bible translation.
OBS projects last 2 to 3 years, during which time 4 to 6 2-week training workshops are regularly scheduled. The 2-week regional training workshops cyclically alternate with several months of local storytelling ministries. By the end of a project, OBS workshops produce 16 to 40 newly crafted mother tongue Bible stories. OBS does not prescribe a pre-selected set of Bible stories. Rather, it encourages and assists partnering organizations to select a story set that would best meet their local or regional needs. During the first week of an OBS workshop, participants internalize, craft, tell, and record 4 to 6 new Bible stories. During the second week, they back-translate, check, revise, and orally perform the newly crafted mother tongue Bible stories. An OBS project typically serves 3 to 6 Bibleless or partially Bibleless language groups. Each language group commissions a team of 3 or 4 people to be trained as OBS mother tongue story crafters and storytellers. The responsibilities of an OBS project and workshop are assumed by people in 4 basic roles, though roles often overlap or expand. The first role is that of a cross-cultural facilitator-trainer. The second role is that of a mother tongue storyteller-crafter. The third role is that of a consulting story checker. The fourth role is the project manager. Each OBS workshop is led by at least 2 facilitator trainers, one of which typically directs the workshop. The most important responsibilities of a facilitator trainer are first, to lead the mother tongue storyteller crafters in the study and internalization of each new Bible story, and second, to organize the schedule and direct the progress of each workshop. Storyteller crafters work in teams of 3 or 4 mother tongue speakers. During each workshop, they are responsible for studying and internalizing each new Bible story, and then for crafting, retelling, and recording that story in their mother tongue. As a team, storyteller crafters from each language group return to their respective language communities to tell their newly crafted stories and to pass those stories on to others in Bible storytelling clubs. OBS story checkers oversee the translation and performance integrity of the newly translated Bible stories. Their most important responsibility is to competently check the quality of each newly crafted mother tongue story. OBS checkers adapt the conventional principles of Bible translation checking to their critique of orally drafted Bible stories. Between the regional workshops, OBS project managers supervise the local and regional storytelling activities of the mother tongue storyteller crafters. A project manager monitors and reports the progress of the storytellers and helps the storytellers train other mother tongue speakers to tell the newly crafted Bible stories. OBS participants begin each morning by singing songs of praise and worship to God. Throughout a workshop, participants also pray. Morning worship and prayer is followed by a brief devotion. Beginning with the morning devotion, workshop participants are progressively immersed in the study and internalization of a new Bible story each day. However, participants do not study a book, they study a story. Bible stories are not read, they are told. The entire process is conducted orally. To begin then, the OBS facilitator trainer tells the Bible story for that day, from memory, to all the workshop participants. The facilitator trainer tells the story using a language of wider communication. In this particular workshop, French is used. An OBS facilitator trainer normally has a high level of competence in the language of wider communication. Some members of the mother tongue storyteller crafter team may also have a high level of competence in the language of wider communication. Yet often, storyteller crafters are only able to carry on a modest conversation in that language. The OBS facilitator trainer not only tells the Bible story, he or she also models effective methods of storytelling. OBS storyteller crafters, then, not only learn by listening, but by observing and imitating other storytellers. After the facilitator trainer has told the story for the first time, He or she shares a brief meditation on the story, or leads a brief discussion on the basic theme of the story. Morning devotion ends with prayer, but the study of the Word of God has just begun. When the morning devotion is finished, the facilitator trainer tells the new Bible story again. This second telling of the story marks the beginning of an intense, morning-long period of study. This morning-long period of study is called the internalization process. The internalization process is the heart of the OBS method.
L'appropriation. Parce que pour pouvoir narrer cette histoire, il faut se l'approprier. Et comme je l'ai déjà expliqué en d'autres
Okay, we all know what's next now, what follows. Each one of us will soon tell a new Bible story. But first, we are going to do the internalization. That is, in order to be able to learn to tell a new story, we first need to internalize it. The process of internalization provides a way, a method, for us to digest the story, to personally incorporate it into our own lives.
d'histoire en question. Ça devient notre propre histoire.
During each OBS internalization session, OBS trainers and storyteller crafters methodically identify, discuss, and internalize key elements of each new Bible story. They discuss the story's characters, context, plot, twists, and main ideas, as well as difficult words, expressions, and concepts. The internalization process begins as the facilitator trainer guides the mother tongue storyteller crafters in a lively group discussion of all the characters in the story.
Nous commençons par les personnages.
Okay, let's begin with the characters in the story, sometimes discussing them together in this large group, and sometimes separately in each of our language groups. Okay? Everybody ready? Shall we begin?
Citons d'abord
As a group, participants describe and discuss what they know about each character based upon what that character does, what that character says or thinks, or what the narrator or other characters in the story say or think about that character. As the storyteller crafters gain a better understanding of the motivations, attitudes, feelings, and thoughts of each of the story's characters, they become better equipped to more effectively translate, craft, and retell the story of these characters in their mother tongue. After discussing the story's characters at length, the facilitator trainer then guides the mother tongue storyteller crafters in a discussion of the general context of the story. Participants consider relevant geographic contexts, social contexts, cultural contexts, religious contexts, political contexts, and economic contexts. After discussing the story's context, the facilitator trainer then guides the mother tongue storyteller crafters in a discussion and internalization of the story's plot.
Nous allons donc continuer cette appropriation avec les autres étapes. Nous avons déjà vu
We are going to continue the internalization process with the other steps in the process. We have already considered the characters and the context, and now we are going to discuss what? The plot. Shall we discuss the plot? Let's discuss the plot. The different subdivisions of the story. How the story is organized. We'll do that together and in our different language groups, so that each one of us will be able to recount what comes before and what comes after what.
qu'est-ce qui vient après quoi.
The plot of the story may be internalized in a variety of ways. For example, the facilitator trainer may simply retell the story. Then, the storyteller crafters, in turn, retell the basic sequences of the plot in the language of wider communication to the entire group. Alternatively, each storyteller crafter may also retell the basic plot of the story in his or her mother tongue to all of the other storyteller crafters in his or her language team.
Puisque vous êtes quatre parlants en dehors de IASA,
Now retell the plot, 2 by 2, in your mother tongue, not in French, in your mother tongue. Tell your neighbor, recount to him, all of the sequences of this story, from the beginning to the end, in your mother tongue. As soon as you are finished, he too tells you the story's plot, from the beginning to end, always in the mother tongue. Each one should do so with his neighbor, in the mother tongue. Let's go.
Allez, on y va.
OBS also employs visual methods of internalizing a story's plot through storyboarding or human tableau. A popular visual method entails an impromptu dramatization of the story. The story's cast of characters is spontaneously composed from among the workshop's participants. Costumes and set are improvised. The entire dramatization is then narrated by the facilitator trainer or by a brave volunteer from among the storyteller crafters.
Jésus dit dans sa langue, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani.
In the process of telling and retelling the plot of a story, the trainer and the storyteller crafters occasionally discover that certain sequences in the plot still seem vague or even confusing. In such cases, workshop participants may discuss and propose alternate ways to reorder those sequences so as to render them more coherent to their audience. After discussing and visualizing the story's plot, the trainer then guides the storyteller crafters in a discussion of the unexpected twists and turns in the story. These discussions of a story's twists and turns are followed by a discussion of the story's main ideas and themes. During an OBS workshop, group discussions of a story's principal themes are often passionate, a sign of the story's growing personal impact on the workshop participants. The discussions of a story's twists and themes are followed by a brief exploration of ways in which the opening and closing of the Bible story at hand might be effectively adapted for a live storytelling event. Often, for example, listeners cannot readily understand some elements of a Bible story if they do not already know certain relevant elements from other Bible stories. To remedy this problem, many OBS storytellers judiciously include the needed information in the opening of their story. By the final step in the OBS internalization process, participants have discovered certain words and expressions in the story that are plainly difficult to understand and will certainly be problematic to express in their mother tongue. The facilitator trainer then guides the participants in a discussion of the likely interpretations of those terms.
Il n'y a pas milieu chez vous.
Take the phrase at mid-morning. There isn't a phrase like mid-morning in your language? Right. For mid-morning, one could say 9 o'clock.
Each team then searches for natural ways to communicate those terms in their mother tongue. The facilitator trainer proposes a few basic translation principles to guide the teams in their search. The teams have now begun the shift away from recounting the story in a language of wider communication toward a complete retelling of the story in their mother tongue. By the end of each OBS internalization session, OBS trainers and storyteller crafters have methodically identified, discussed, and internalized many of the key elements of a new Bible story. The story's characters, context, plot, twists, climax, main ideas, opening, and closing, as well as several problematic words and expressions. Each team is now better prepared to orally craft and retell that story in their mother tongue. Each day in the first week of an OBS workshop, storyteller crafters typically spend an entire morning internalizing each new Bible story. Intermittently, however, other important training modules also take place, such as the telling and study of traditional mother tongue storytelling practices. Most often, participants share in these training modules as one large group in one large classroom. To begin an afternoon Bible story crafting session, each language team goes to separate rooms. There, they listen to the entire story again. They may listen to an audio recording of the story as it was told and recorded earlier that morning, or someone in that language team may simply retell the story to the others. Then, either section by section or in its entirety, the storyteller crafters retell the story out loud in their mother tongue. As they retell the story in their mother tongue, they critique their choice of words and revise their retelling accordingly. Once the whole language team is in agreement with their revisions, the story is retold and recorded. After the storyteller crafters have successfully retold and recorded the story in their mother tongue, they listen to the entire recording and revise and edit as seems necessary. Some storyteller crafter teams may not finish their mother tongue crafting in one afternoon. They may work into the night or longer. As each language team finishes recording their first orally drafted translation of a Bible story in their mother tongue, backup copies of the audio recordings are made and digitally filed. These files will serve as the reference texts from which back translations will soon be made. They will also serve as the reference texts to be orally checked the following week by an OBS story checker. At the end of the first week, each language team has crafted 4 or 5 new Bible stories. To begin the demanding task of learning to tell each story by heart, every evening each storyteller listens to the new stories multiple times. They may listen to the current draft recording or to each other. Then, little by little, as they take an evening walk or lie on their beds, they try to retell a story aloud, to themselves or to anyone who will listen. Over the weekend, between the first and second week of the workshop, storytellers continued to listen to and tell their stories aloud. A few brave souls paved the way for the others by finding opportunities to tell their newly crafted stories to mother tongue speakers outside the workshop, to friends or relatives who may live or attend churches nearby. Each morning in the second week of an OBS workshop, participants continue to worship and pray together, to listen to the Word of God in story, and reflect on its meaning in their lives. The first new task of the week, however, is the task of back-translating the mother tongue stories that were crafted the week before. To begin the back translation process, one mother tongue speaker listens, section by section, to the draft recording of the newly crafted mother tongue story. Then, the mother tongue speaker tells a typist how one would retell that section in the story in the language of wider communication. The typist then enters that phrase, as it is told in the language of wider communication, into an OBS back translation template. This process continues until every successive phrase in the story has been heard in the mother tongue and freely retold in the language of wider communication. The document is then digitally filed, and often it is printed for the OBS story checker to preview before the ensuing story checking session. During the second week of a workshop, once each story has been back translated, each story is then checked for accuracy, clarity, and naturalness of expression. The storyteller crafters for each language team meet with an OBS story checker for 30 to 90 minutes to review the audio recording of the first draft of each new mother tongue story. To begin the checking session, the story checker and storyteller crafter team listen to the entire mother tongue story, as it is told by someone on the language team, or as it is heard on the latest draft recording of the story. At this early point in the checking session, the storyteller crafters may already hear certain parts of the story that they want to revise. If so, they discuss their proposals with the story checker, and together the story checker and the storyteller crafters come to an agreement on the changes that should be made. Sometimes revisions are immediately applied to the latest draft recording, or sometime soon after. If the mother tongue team suggests no other revisions, the OBS story checker carries on his own review of the story. From the beginning of the recording, then, the checker and the mother tongue storytellers progressively listen to successive smaller segments of the story. After each segment is heard in the mother tongue, the story checker asks one member of the language team to orally back translate that segment for him in the language of wider communication.
Derrière là, ils ont commencé à nous frapper sur la tête avec un bâton.
The story checker often tracks this live oral back translation with the written back translation which was orally elicited and typed a day or two earlier. As he follows along in the story checker asks the mother tongue language team probing constructive questions about the ways they have chosen to render these segments of the story in their mother tongue. The checker's goal in asking these questions is not to find errors in the mother tongue version, but to help the mother tongue team discover the best way possible in their brief time together to aptly render that story in their mother tongue. The story checking sessions are often some of the most rewarding moments in an OBS workshop. After each mother tongue Bible story is checked, it is revised and re-recorded. The storytellers then tell these revised versions to mother tongue audiences in their respective language communities. The storytellers are keen to find out what their audiences think about these new stories. So after each storytelling, storytellers ask their audiences questions in order to find out what they understand from these stories, to test the stories for their clarity, accuracy, and naturalness. When the storyteller crafters return to the next regional OBS workshop, the feedback of these mother tongue audiences is reported to the OBS story checker, and shared with all the other language teams. Then a brief final checking session ensues, and the stories are revised accordingly. The final revision of their story is recorded, archived, and appropriately distributed. And finally, as a team, the storyteller crafters of each language group return once again to their respective language communities to tell their revised stories and to pass those stories on to others in local storytelling clubs.
Our culture is, storytelling is part of our culture. And we are an oral culture. Most of us grew up in homes where our parents and grandparents taught us using stories. And those stories lived with us right to this day. And I shared those stories with my kids, and we felt using the Bible story method to help our people connect with scriptures would be a wonderful way, not just to reach people, but to also multiply workers in the harvest. So, and also to be able to connect with communities that do not yet have scriptures. So communities that didn't have scriptures, we could use the Bible storying method to be able to create awareness in those communities, help people to understand the scriptures, and they would want to desire more. And that's what we are seeing. It's been very interesting for us to see that. So we're very happy to see the seed company come alongside us to help build our capacity in a dream that we had to be able to reach communities with the scriptures in an oral way, a way that really connects with the people, and in a way that it is easily transferable. More people could be trained to do this.